the Jets will not be moving forward with Aaron Rodgers. Jay Glazer reported that Rodgers wants to play, went over to New Jersey to talk to staff, but they decided, you know what, we're not going to stick with you. Aaron Glenn's putting his foot down, and according, this is crazy, a report by Diana Rossini, I want to make sure I get this right, on Scoop City, along with coach Chase Daniel, it seems like the Jets gave Rodgers an ultimatum. This is what Diana Rossini said, and I quote, I was told that when they had conversations with Aaron Rodgers about what the future would look like, if you're going to be a part of this team, you're going to attend all of training camp. You're not going to do the Pat McAfee interviews anymore. They had a conversation with him of, quote, if you were to stay here, here's how we want it to be. This is Aaron getting his control. This is what the Jets haven't had the past 2 seasons, because it's been Aaron Rodgers being the assistant GM. Aaron Glenn, which Robert Saleh didn't want to do, he didn't want to upset your new quarterback that the fans really have hope for. Aaron Glenn's putting his foot down and saying, you're not going on the Pat McAfee show? You're not gonna take the random trip to Egypt? You're going to be here? And apparently they're not moving forward. Rodgers didn't want to do that, so he's out as the Jets quarterback moving forward. Yeah. I would like to say before I ask you the question, Rodgers' projected teams, the favorites are Steelers, Raiders, Niners, Vikings, and Titans. That rounds out the top 5, and then there's others. Colts, Rams, Giants, Browns, Jets, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, the top 5 teams. Steelers, Raiders, Niners, Vikings, Titans. That rounds out the 5 probable teams that Rodgers could go to. So here's my question to you. Are you surprised that the Jets would move off of Aaron Rodgers after it seems like the past 2 franchises, he's really held hostage a little bit? Or are you surprised the Jets finally put their foot down and Aaron Glenn saying, not today?
I'm not that surprised. I mean, he was getting hammered by the media in New York, and the Jets kind of listened to that a little bit, I think. Aaron Glenn really coming out, some of his comments I was a little surprised by. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a 4-time MVP quarterback, and he questioned his, dedication, I don't know. I was a little surprised at Aaron Glenn's comments. My guess is this is probably a huge mistake by the Jets because they can't get it right at quarterback. They have rarely gotten it right. Joe Namath, they got that right. I guess you could argue that Vinny Testaverde, they claimed him and they got that right. He took him to the AFC Championship game, and maybe Mark Sanchez was right for 2 years was right. And that's it. They've had armies of quarterbacks that have gone through the Jets. I just think this will wind up, you wait and see, it'll wind up being a huge mistake. Aaron Rodgers will go somewhere next year and have a great year. I mean, his year, you look at his stats, didn't really turn out all that bad. And particularly for a Jets quarterback, you could look at it and say, wow, he did really well. But they part ways with him. There's no heir apparent. There's no real obvious answer in free agency or the draft. You can look at Tyrod Taylor. I think that would be a mistake based on his age and his injuries. He played all of 36 snaps last year. You have Jordan Travis, who is an interesting developmental prospect. I mean, he had that terrible leg injury, broken leg, and playing for Florida State. He maybe he's a wild card. Maybe he's somebody that could come in there, and I think he should get a look for sure. There's free agents, Darnold, Wilson, Fields. Darnold not going back to the Jets. I mean, he's still got to have a sour taste in his mouth from that. Russell Wilson, I don't know. Maybe he winds up there. Justin Fields would be. I think any team that could get him that is really in need of a quarterback, I would give him. And at the Jets, I'd give him a look for sure. And then there's Daniel Jones. He's not coming back to New York. Just the way he played here, I'm sure the Jets aren't going to go get him. And then there's Kirk Cousins, who is not a free agent, but he's going to be released probably. Interestingly, the Vikings' former GM Spielman is with the Jets as a senior football advisor. He's probably big on Cousins, and you only got to pay Cousins $1.2 million next year. The Vikings are paying the Falcons are paying $27.5 million for him. So I really think Kirk Cousins is going to get a hard look, and there's a very good chance that he'll wind up being their quarterback. Rodgers has $49 million of dead cap charges. That's pretty expensive. You look at the draft, the 2 best guys are going to be gone. Before you get to number 7, where the Jets are drafting, there's Dart, Milroe, and Evers. and Ewers, the Texas quarterback. Those guys are, they're not the top tier, but maybe the Jets, and they probably can be had in the second round. So maybe you don't use your first round pick for one of those three. Rodgers hasn't said whether he'll continue to play next year or not, but I would think he'd want to, given the way he's been. He doesn't want to go out in his career with the image that he has right now, which is horrible.
Well, I know one team that's probably not going to want him, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers, because their starting safety, Deshaun Elliott, made it very clear, direct quote, leave his bleep at the retirement home. Not a great look if you bring him into Pittsburgh, and the starting safety is already saying, leave his bleep in the retirement home. So my guess is not going to go with that. And by the way, I don't know if Arthur Smith and Rodgers would be the perfect, couple in paradise over there, because I think the philosophies kind of don't work. You have Rodgers, who is not as mobile anymore and who under pressure crumbles because he's 41 years old. Not great behind an offensive line that Mike Tomlin can never get right. And a bunch of talent that isn't really talent. And also, you're probably not going to sign Najee Harris because you haven't really appreciated him. I think you denied his fifth-year option. He put up 1,000 yards, but what does 1,000 yards now mean in today's NFL when you play 17 games? I'm not sure if 1,000 yards cuts it. Maybe we need to boost it to 1,200.
It's still a lot of yards.
It is, but we play 17 games now. So do we need to say 1,100 yards, the new 1,000 yards? I'm not sure. But when it comes down to Rodgers, I'm actually going to be glass half full. Because I think it was right quarterback, wrong time. Or rather, wrong role. Because Rodgers came to the New York Jets as the answer. As the guy who is the last piece of the puzzle. That's unfair. Because the last time we saw Rodgers, he was a guy who couldn't even make the playoffs with the Green Bay Packers. Made his wide receiver quit because Rodgers took too much money. 3 years, $150 million fully guaranteed. Devontae Adams got his butt out of there and went over to the Las Vegas Raiders to team up with Derek Carr, who, by the way, didn't even last the full year with Las Vegas at the time. But yeah, Rodgers decided to go over to the Jets as their savior. That was the big thing. They finally got a quarterback. And it completely fell apart 4 plays in. He ruptured his Achilles. Then he comes in this season. We have basically the same expectation because they got a better offensive line. Breece Hall was healthy. He was going to team up with Garrett Wilson. We saw the offseason throws, the highlight reels that the Jets PR team was putting out, and all the highlight, whatever the case may be. And then they eventually got Devontae Adams after a couple of games throughout the season. But I think when it comes down to it, it was the right quarterback, just the wrong role. I think Rodgers played effectively enough in the second half of the season when he was finally getting back into rhythm. Because obviously you come back from an Achilles injury. We saw what Kirk Cousins looked like. He was a statue the entire season. Rodgers was at least a little bit better than that because he tore his Achilles 4 snaps into week 1. Kirk Cousins did it 8 weeks into the prior season. So the recovery time is a little bit better in Rodgers' case. But once we saw midway through the year, the production picked up a little bit, but it wasn't enough. Late game situations turned into blame game for Rodgers, blaming other people for where they should be when you didn't really practice with them. You brought in you had Mike Williams in there, but you couldn't get a connection with him. You couldn't develop a connection with him. It really was Garrett Wilson, and then it turned into only Devontae Adams, and Garrett Wilson seems a little bit disgruntled. So for me, I don't think it's going to be the Steelers, because if your starting safety is already saying keep your blank in the retirement home, not a great look. The Raiders, he fits the Raiders mantra and kind of what the Raiders fandom is. I think Rodgers would fit in beautifully there. But I think that based on all the reporting with Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, with the Steelers potentially moving off Russ in favor of Justin Fields, Pete Carroll may want to team up with Russ again. The 49ers is the interesting one because Brock Purdy still has a year left before they actually need to pay him because he's not eligible for a 5th-year option. So he's eligible this season for an extension. And Jed York, the owner, and John Lynch both say they want to keep him here for a long time. But not at the $60 million price tag. I think that's where the quarterback situation, contractually, it's not, the next best quarterback. It's just the next quarterback up. I think that's what the contract situation has turned into. If Brock Purdy even has a 5 at the start of his contract or mid-5s, I think that's overpay completely for a guy who crumbles late in games. He doesn't have a clutch factor to him. And especially if it rains a little bit, Brock Purdy's a shell of himself. So I don't think if you're not paying him $65 million, he's not worth that money. He's not worth $60 million. By the way, once again, we can't take a look at Dak Prescott and say, well, he's the next guy up. He's the standard we set. It's unfair. Deshaun Watson wasn't the standard. I don't think that Trevor Lawrence is the standard. Or even, I don't think right now Jordan Love is the standard. He needs to earn his contract. Trevor Lawrence right now hasn't earned his contract. Dak Prescott, we just saw him get hurt. And he didn't look that great at the start of this year. When it was 2-7 to start the year out. It was bad. Really bad. So for me, glass half full. Rodgers will get a job. I think he will start next season. Because apparently he still wants to play. Obviously, we can go down the storyline route and say, you know what? The Vikings are a good one because that's the exact same route that Brett Favre had. Packers, 1 year starting with the Jets, then Vikings. Rodgers it came down to because I'm knocking that 2023 season out. With the Packers, goes to the Jets, starts for 1 full year, then goes to the Vikings. Because I think we don't know what J.J. McCarthy's healing process looks like. He's still technically injured. Now, the contract situation is the big one. What's the issue with Aaron Rodgers' contract? He's going to want more money? Or is he going to finally, get rid of his ego for half a second and say, you know what? I'm 41. I'm going to just cruise on by. Give me whatever you want to give me. I'm not going to be asking for $50 million or 45 or 40. Brock Purdy deal, or rather the Baker Mayfield deal, $33 million doesn't seem so bad.
Won't the acquiring team get a deal because he's
was it
$49 million of dead cap money with the Jets?
So a veteran minimum, you think?
Maybe, yeah, that would be okay, right? I would say the Vikings would be a great decision for the Vikings because if he goes there and plays well, then that gives McCarthy a year to watch, former MVP, and it gives him time to really show that he's healed. And if Rodgers doesn't play that well, then you can bring McCarthy in and see what he can do. So
I think that Rodgers only has 1 year left. I think that again, and who knows? Maybe Rodgers doesn't have a market at all because if he wouldn't agree to show up to training camp and stop being on the Pat McAfee show to play football, who says another team that needs a quarterback who could look at the past year with the Jets and say, well, his production was okay, but I'm hearing reports about teammates having to walk on eggshells around to always please him. And also that halfway through the year, reportedly the Jets are waving the white flag of defeat saying, I want the season to be over already. What does that say to a team with a young core? With how about a young quarterback who's trying to learn how to win in the NFL? What does that say?
Well, maybe there isn't a market for him. I would say that would he go to a team with a 1 year deal? I would think he'd want a 2 year deal.
But he was 90% retired before he even came to the Jets.
He said that, but then he's played. I mean, and then he went through all that rehab with his Achilles to be able to play this past year. So he still got fire. No matter what he says, actions speak louder than words. He's been out there. He wanted to play.
You know what his actions say? I'm going to go to Egypt during mandatory minicamp.
Yeah.
I'm going to
ayahuasca.
I'm going to take ayahuasca. I'm going to basically create an Aaron Rodgers bubble and not let anyone in because I'm my own guy instead of being a team player. It's not a good look.
No.
There's a reason why the Packers decided enough was enough.
If he wants to
went
play,
on a darkness retreat.
If he wants to play,
no contact
and a
with
team can get him for $1.2 million, he's going to get a chance somewhere for sure. Now, would he want to go to a team like the Titans? Probably not. I mean, they're pretty bad. But would he want to go to the Vikings? For sure.
Maybe.
For sure he would.
Because you have Jordan Addison, you have Justin
Would he want to go to the Steelers?
Jones?
Yeah, he would want to go there. Sure. They're a playoff team last year. So, yeah, there's some teams he'd want to go to and teams that would have good teams that would have an interest in him. So it's going to be fun to watch.
Why do I like the 49ers?
I don't think that, to me, that is never going to happen. That's not going to happen.
You got 2 years left on Purdy's deal.
I predict that that's not going to happen.
The Steelers, the Steelers are the favorite. But I can't see if your starting safety's already coming out and saying...
Well, who cares what your starting safety says? He's not running the show.
Because he's a player for your team.
He's not running the show.
He's a player for your team.
The GM can go call him in and say, hey, shut up. You're not making any decisions here. We are.
Fair. The Colts, no. Rams, no. Giants, hell no. Browns,
has
no.
Stafford made a decision yet about what he's going to do?
I mean, right now,
he should come back.
I don't want to give away Friday's whole show, but apparently Stafford and the Giants have been linked. Just throw it out there. There's a report
He's
out
a
there
free
saying,
agent?
No, he's not a free agent, but a trade, obviously. We got to
Who
dive into
the
the
Giants
reporting.
got that they could trade? Neighbors?
Hell no. Defensive guy. Who knows? We'll talk about it on Friday. I'm sure that'll be a Friday
I think
topic.
the Rams should hang on to Stafford the way he played. They gave the Eagles the toughest game in the playoffs.
I mean, first of all,
They
there's
really-
a lot that we can get into for the offseason. Like, for instance, there's a report out there earlier this week, or late last week, actually, that the Titans could trade out of the number 1 spot. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have an offensive line. And they also don't have a running game. And your wide receiver core is Calvin Ridley and who? Trade out of the 1 spot. And your defense is pretty bad as well. Trading out of the 1 spot, and especially in this draft class, who's really the solidified number 1 guy? You can't say anybody.
Yeah.
Cam Ward, are we sure? Abdul Carter, maybe? Travis Hunter? Shedeur Sanders? Like, there's no one that, like, for instance, every single quarterback this past draft class would beat out every single quarterback. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, beat out every single quarterback in this draft class. All 6 in the first round. No doubt in my mind. So that just shows you how weak, or maybe how strong the other draft class was, but the fact that there's no separation in really anybody. There's no Marvin Harrison Jr. skill. Like, Travis Hunter is the guy, but people are choosing Abdul Carter to the Browns, or who knows. It's crazy, but no, Rodgers, this was a smart move. I'm a little bit surprised, actually, that Aaron Glenn, the new guy, putting his foot down and saying, no.
He came out and said, you know what? We're not a team that's going to be about one player. It's about all the players.
He goes.
He would really beat up on Aaron Rodgers.
Amen to that. Amen, because he came from the Detroit Lions, who were 3-13-1 in Dan Campbell's first year, and the Lions turned into one of the most beloved franchises the past 2 seasons, just because everybody loves Dan Campbell.
They said, Mike Williams, Aaron Rodgers threw him under the bus, and then backed up and ran over him again.
Yeah, he was blaming him for a deep route that obviously, if you don't practice with the guy all the time, that you're not going to know.
Yeah.
Like, Rodgers, that first few weeks of the season, do we have to go to the Vikings one that got Robert Saleh fired? Rodgers threw, 2 or 3 interceptions, one of them pick 6, then Woody Johnson was over there, whining, and then had his sons come into the locker room and start bashing some of the teammates. Like, the Jets organization is terrible. They never got quarterback right. The offensive line was a disappointment. The running game wasn't great. Wide receivers, it turned into originally the Garrett Wilson show, and then it turned into Devontae Adams and made Garrett Wilson not so happy. It was never a cohesive unit here. And then the defense, after Robert Saleh left, was a complete disappointment. The Jets just a bad franchise. They have the longest playoff drought
I guarantee you this decision will be viewed in next year, at the end of next year, as a bad mistake. You wait and see. I bet it will be considered bad, unless
12.
Maybe Jordan Travis comes out of nowhere.
Not a chance. He was out the whole year.
Yeah, but now he should be recovered now. He should be able to play this year.
I'm going to make a call. Kirk Cousins to the Jets.
Yeah, I think that's
Kirk
right.
Cousins.
I think it's going to happen. $1.2 million. How can you go wrong? Huh?
Well, I mean,
it can't be any worse than than the last 2 years.
I mean, would Kirk Cousins get the veteran minimum if the Falcons release him?
It's a low bar, beating out Rodgers' performance this past year and Zach Wilson the year before.
By the way, Zach Wilson had a better year. I think every single season that Zach Wilson played, he had a better year than Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If you go 5-12, how much worse can you be? There's really not a lot of wiggle room in record-wise. You got 5 wins of wiggle room. Can you maintain a 5-12 record with, in your case, Jordan Travis or Sam Darnold? Or
why not?
Kirk Cousins
should be able to. John, I don't think Darnold. He's not going there. He's not going back to the Jets.
You don't think so?
No, he doesn't want to be there. He can't have any good memories of being with the Jets. I don't know what they would be. The media were all over him, brutalized him. The team, the organization treated him poorly. If I were him, I wouldn't touch the Jets. They're bad. They're bad news for him.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for watching this clip of the Harvey Hour. If you want to watch the full show, you can by clicking the I in the top right-hand corner right now. If you want to take the show with you on the go, it is available wherever you get your podcast. We go live here on YouTube every single Tuesday and Friday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, and the notification bell to get notified whenever we upload a video and whenever we go live.